Hey man, if there's one truth that separates the men women obsess over from the men women quietly lose respect for, it's this. The more you try to please her, the faster you lose her. And I know that lands hard. It sounds backwards. Everything you've been taught, every movie, every song, every piece of advice from people who don't understand attraction told you the opposite. Be good to her, be available, anticipate her needs, make her happy, give her everything she asks for. But here's the twist that no one prepared you for. Trying to please a woman is the single biggest attraction killer in the masculine playbook. Not because she wants to be mistreated, not because she's ungrateful, but because the moment you start bending your identity, adjusting your truth, molding yourself to win her approval, you've already lost something far more valuable than her. You've lost yourself, and she can feel it. She may not have the words for it, she may not even consciously understand what shifted, but something in her nervous system registers the change. The man she was drawn to, the one who stood firm, who had gravity, who made her feel something she couldn't explain, he's gone. In his place is someone softer, someone seeking, someone who needs her validation to feel whole. And that energy, it's suffocating to her, because it tells her something she doesn't want to know. I'm not enough on my own. I need you to choose me before I can choose myself. That's the beginning of the end. Not with a fight, not with a dramatic exit, but with a slow, quiet erosion of the very thing that brought her to you in the first place. Your presence, your groundedness, your masculine essence. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how this happens. How good men with good intentions destroy attraction by trying to please, and more importantly, how to reclaim what you've been giving away without even realizing it. The downfall of a man rarely happens all at once. It's not a single moment of weakness. It's not one mistake that breaks everything. It starts small, almost invisible. It starts when you text her back faster than you should, not because you're excited, but because you're anxious. When you cancel plans with your friends to see her, not because you want to, but because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. When you stop saying what you actually think and start filtering every word through the question, will this upset her? It starts when you catch yourself asking, what do you want me to be? Instead of standing firmly in who you already are. You think you're building connection. You think you're showing her how much you care. You think effort and availability and constant accommodation are the path to her heart. But what you're actually building is dependence. You're placing her comfort above your truth, her mood above your mission, her approval above your soul. And once she senses that, once she feels that subtle shift in your energy, her attraction begins to die. Not because you're not enough, but because now you're trying to be too much. You're performing instead of existing, reaching instead of standing. And nothing repels feminine desire faster than a man who's trying to earn what he should already know he deserves. Now, stay with me here because I'm about to explain exactly what happens inside her when you start pleasing. The psychology that no one talks about. And once you understand this, you will never see attraction the same way again. Here's what most men don't realize. The second you start trying to please her, you don't just lose attraction, you flip the entire dynamic. You place her in a role she never wanted, the masculine role. Think about it. When you're constantly asking what she wants, when you're waiting for her signals, when you're adjusting your behavior based on her mood, you're not leading, you're following. Now she's the one setting the tone, making the decisions, holding the frame. And even if she can't articulate it, even if she says you're sweet or such a good guy, deep in her body, something recoils because she can't relax into her feminine when you've dropped your masculine. She can't surrender when there's nothing to surrender to. She's now emotionally managing the relationship, and women don't crave what they have to manage. They crave what they can lean into, what they can trust, what they can feel without thinking. That's not found in a man who pleases. That's found in a man who leads. A man who knows where he's going and invites her to join, but doesn't beg her to come. A man whose presence has weight, whose words have intention, whose frame doesn't bend because she got upset. The moment you hand her the steering wheel, she doesn't feel relief. She feels unsafe. Not because you're a bad man, but because you just revealed that you don't know how to hold the ship steady. And no woman wants to build a life with a captain who keeps asking the passengers which direction to sail. There's a dark irony buried in the heart of every pleaser. Most men who try to please are doing it from a genuinely good place. They're kind, they care, they want to make it work. They want her to feel loved, appreciated, valued. But the problem isn't the heart, it's the need hiding behind it. The need to be accepted, the need to be validated, the need to feel worthy, not through his own knowing, but through her response. And that need, no matter how carefully it's disguised, bleeds through everything. She can feel it in the way he texts, in the way he apologizes for things he didn't do, in the way he scrambles to fix her mood instead of simply holding space. That energy, needy, performative, approval-seeking, is suffocating to her. Not because she's cold, but because it communicates something she can't ignore. I'm not complete without you. I need you to choose me before I can feel okay about myself. And women don't desire men who make them their oxygen. They desire men who breathe freely. Men whose center doesn't shift based on whether she smiled at them this morning. Men whose approval she has to earn. Not because he's playing games, but because he genuinely values himself enough that his validation isn't free. That's the difference between a man who loves and a man who grasps. One gives from overflow, the other reaches from emptiness, and she can feel the difference in her bones. And here's where most men completely destroy themselves without even realizing it. They think pleasing her is the path to keeping her, but what they're actually doing is building the very prison that suffocates her attraction. You see it all the time. A man meets a woman, he's confident, grounded, magnetic, he has direction, he has edges, he has that presence that makes her stomach turn when he looks at her, and then he falls in love. And slowly, imperceptibly, he starts to morph. He changes his style to match what she likes. He drops his friends to spend more time with her. He picks up her hobbies. He softens his opinions. He becomes who he thinks she wants instead of standing in who he actually is. At first, she's flattered. She thinks, wow, he really cares about me. But deep down, something shifts. That gravity she felt, it's fading. That grounded presence, it's dissolving. The man who made her feel alive just by standing in a room, he's now asking for permission to speak. She may not even understand why she's losing interest, but she is, because the version of you she was attracted to no longer exists. You killed him, not with cruelty, with accommodation, not with absence, with excessive presence, not with coldness, with softness that had no edge. And no woman falls in love with a man who can't hold himself. Because if you can't hold yourself, how will you ever hold her when life gets hard? What I'm about to tell you next is the part that separates the men women date from the men women never forget. And it has nothing to do with what most guys think attraction is built on. There's a difference most men never understand. A distinction that determines everything. Pleasing and loving are not the same thing. Pleasing is rooted in fear. The fear of not being enough, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of her disapproval. So you give, you adjust, you accommodate, you sacrifice your truth, all to avoid the pain of her pulling away. Loving is rooted in strength. It's the energy that says, I love you, but I don't need you to complete me. I want you here, but I'm whole without you. I'll give you everything I am, but I won't become someone I'm not to keep you. Women feel that difference in their nervous system. The man who loves with strength doesn't need to overdo it. He's not performing. He's not walking on eggshells. He's living in his truth, and she either rises to meet it or falls away from it. But the pleaser, he's trying to buy love. Trading effort for affection, exchanging compliance for connection, and that trade never works. Because the moment she senses that your kindness comes from insecurity, not certainty, something in her detaches. Maybe slowly, maybe violently, but it happens. Because you weren't offering love, you were offering a transaction disguised as devotion. There's a reason the nice guy finishes last, and it's not because kindness is wrong, it's because the intention behind his kindness is weakness. He's not kind because he's powerful and chooses to be gentle. He's kind because he's afraid of rejection, afraid of being alone, afraid of losing access to her attention, her body, her affection. So he gives, he adjusts, he apologizes for things he didn't do. He agrees when he disagrees. He laughs at jokes that aren't funny. He becomes a mirror reflecting whatever he thinks she wants to see, and she senses it. The lack of backbone beneath the compliments, the hollow energy under the gestures, the desperation dressed up as devotion. Even if he thinks he's doing everything right, she slowly pulls away. Not because she's cruel, but because he wasn't offering love. He was offering compliance, and no woman craves a man who lives on his knees. Women aren't drawn to servants. They're drawn to sovereigns, men who walk like kings, not boys begging to be chosen. Now, I need to warn you about something, because this is where most men sabotage everything they've built. And if you don't understand this, you'll keep losing her respect without ever knowing why. A woman's biggest test is not how you treat her when things are easy. It's not how romantic you are on good days. It's how you hold your frame when things are uncertain. When she pulls away, do you beg? When she disrespects you, do you tolerate it? When she withholds affection, do you try harder? When she tests your boundaries, do you cave just to keep the peace? That's the real test. And she's not just testing your feelings, she's testing your core. She needs to know if you'll abandon yourself to keep her. She needs to feel whether your identity collapses under pressure. She's searching, not consciously, but instinctually, for the walls of your fortress. And when you fold, when you please, when you bend your truth to avoid her disapproval, she doesn't feel loved. She feels disgusted, not with cruelty, but with disappointment, because deep down, every woman knows, a man who folds for her will fold under pressure. A man who can't stand his ground with her can't protect her from the world. A man who abandons himself to please her is not a man she can trust with her chaos. And trust, not affection, not effort, not availability, is the foundation of lasting desire. And what I'm about to tell you next is why some men become absolutely unforgettable, the ones she thinks about years later, while others fade from her memory within weeks. You want to know what really separates them? Look at the men women obsess over. It's not the nicest one. It's not the one who texts the most or gives the most compliments. It's not the one who's always available, always agreeable, always accommodating. It's the man who gives less, but every drop has weight, intensity, direction. He's not performing. He's not reactive. He's not molding himself to her expectations. He's standing, grounded, unapologetic, complete. And that presence does something to her. It hits her in her nervous system. It pulls her out of her overthinking and into her body. It makes her feel something she can't manufacture with words or gestures. The man who tries to please will never compete with that, because she doesn't want emotional labor. She wants emotional power. She wants a man who can let her cry without rushing to fix it, who can let her storm without matching her chaos, who can hold the container steady while she falls apart and still be standing when she comes back to herself. That man is rare, that man is magnetic, that man is irresistible, not because he's trying to be, but because he's done trying. And in that stillness, that quiet, unwavering presence, she finds something most women never experience: safety. Not the kind that comes from words, the kind that comes from a man who knows exactly who he is. Now, let me tell you what happens when you actually stop pleasing and start embodying, because the effects go far beyond just attraction. Here's something that shifts when you finally make this change. When you stop trying to please, something profound happens, not just in how she sees you, but in how you see yourself. You stop apologizing for having standards. You stop editing your truth to make her comfortable. You stop shrinking to fit inside her expectations, and you start standing fully, without apology. You say no when you mean no. You walk her when your boundaries are violated. You hold your ground when she pushes, not with anger, but with quiet, immovable clarity. And she feels it. Maybe she resists at first. Maybe she tests harder, but eventually something in her settles, because she's no longer with a man she has to lead. She's with a man she can trust, a man whose love doesn't come from fear, whose kindness doesn't come from weakness, whose presence doesn't collapse just because she withdrew. That's the man she stays for. That's the man she respects. That's the man she thinks about years after, even if she's with someone else, because he didn't just date her. He showed her what it feels like to be with someone whole. So here's the truth, brother. You were not born to please. You were not designed to mold yourself into whatever shape earns her approval. You were not built to shrink, to bend, to sacrifice your soul on the altar of her validation. You were built to stand. Stop asking, what can I do to make her stay? And start asking, where did I stop leading? That's where the shift happens. That's when you stop chasing and start choosing. That's when attraction rebuilds. Not because you tried harder, but because you finally stopped trying to be anything other than who you actually are. She doesn't want a man who obeys. She wants a man she can trust. And you can't trust someone who changes based on your mood. You can't trust someone who sacrifices truth for comfort. You can't trust someone who abandons himself just to avoid conflict. That man isn't reliable. He's fragile, and fragility kills everything. The men who win in the long run are not the ones who pleased their way into her life. They're the ones who had the strength to walk away when their standards were violated. The ones who didn't chase when she pulled away. The ones who said no without flinching. The ones who loved fiercely but never begged. And that strength leaves an imprint. Even if she leaves, even if she chooses someone else for a while, your presence lingers. Because she didn't just date a man, she encountered a standard, and once a woman has tasted that level of grounded masculinity, everything else feels lesser. So never try to please her, not because she doesn't deserve love, but because she deserves your truth. And truth doesn't bend to please, it stands, it leads, it chooses. You were not born to chase affection, you were born to channel power. The moment you stop performing, stop pleasing, stop reaching for what you should already know is yours, you become magnetic. She may not say it out loud. She may even resist it at first, but deep down, every woman craves a man who cannot be swayed by her emotions. A man who loves deeply, but never at the cost of himself. Be that man, and let the world, and every woman in it, rise or fall based on whether they can handle that kind of strength.